With collectivism always comes a lack of choices, it seems, a lack of, options. There's always restrictions placed upon individuals. And there's this philosophy of collectivism, the philosophy of the group. The group's rights over the individuals, the centralized social planning, the technocratic dictatorship of elites and experts that the collective decides is the expert to listen to, right? And that they won't be wrong. And not that recently, we've seen anything in the news that's been wildly predicted to be certain things that were completely wrong. That's what you get with the technocratic experts and their calculations with their magical machines, is these predictions that can be used in the favor of people who might have, plans and things that are a lot different than what people perceive them to be when it comes to public safety or, the concern for the masses from these experts. And I don't even know, if people who support things like socialism, support things like communism, support things like democracy, even understand the collectivist ideology that they're pushing. And again, with collectivism comes clamping down, always restrictions and limitations and scarcity. There isn't abundance. There isn't infinite amount of options available. There's always a restriction. There's these things that you're allowed to do here. And it shouldn't be that everybody just has, ability to do whatever they want, whenever they want, either. So it's sort of this dialectical opposition in itself, individualism versus collectivism. But it goes back again to the individual empowering themselves enough, with enough information, with enough knowledge, with enough courage, with abilities, to not need to lean on a collective. And it's not like everybody out there needs to be 100%, the lone buck in the woods. That's not how it needs to work either, but talking to my neighbor, that she was in another country, and one of the things that she had to say about the country was that the people there all expected that the government would just do everything for them. This was Puerto Rico. That was her takeaway. That's at least what she told me in passing, sort of, at that moment. But it was interesting that that's what she decided to tell me about the visit, the journey. I just was generally asking about how it was. And it might just show more about her character and the way she sees the world, right? But I think the region she was talking about, there probably is a lot of that. And there is a lot of corruption everywhere, where there was a massive, hurricane, it was a disaster, but then there's also a lot of kind of what we see now with COVID. Like, once people know how to get the funds, they'll, use the system to get those funds for their, business, for their organization, for their personal selves, for their projects. And it's like the Great New Deal, right? It's like how the government distributes out, funds or whatever, digits in computer systems to keep the whole thing going. Which ends up just, causing a lot of havoc and things in the financial system, and really kind of just enslaving us all to future debts again, because it's all relative in some way, in energy exchange, and there's nefarious entities taking advantage of the whole system, of course. That we're talking, and I'm not talking now about like the money system, but I think libertarians and free market economics and agorism and things like that they're beneficial for the philosophical understanding, and things like the non-aggression principle, which can be applied to human behavior, and we can pursue that as a method towards freedom, and have a philosophical discussion on the fundamental axioms there that are operating. And one of those could be a discrepancy between free will or freedom of the individual even. But going back, it's really the Great New Deal, the Great New Coronavirus planning, that all the money that was put out just further sort of entrenches people to the current system. In the future, that money needs to be paid back. The way it's paid back is through this way of sort of paying taxes, and they borrow and they shift things and they sell things, and they borrow against other fake documents and papers and things like that. The problem with that is that a lot of your life energy goes into kind of keeping this whole thing going. Again, sacrificing your energy for the collective. And the collective at many points in history, and it's a sort of repeating thing, is typically wrong. There's typically not a lot of correctness that comes from a group. When we should follow the group, we should follow the general consensus, but when has the general consensus ever been correct? But now, with science and all this, right? Science isn't the leading driving factor in the decision making of your health or of the economic things, decisions and factors that factor into, should a vaccine be taken or not. There's a lot of people with a lot of investments in place that are relying on a good return for their, investments in vaccinations, which they were promised at the board meetings would be a very substantial return on that investment. So now, it's time to make the promise to the stakeholders true by selling the vaccines, again, to governments who will borrow money, further enslaving you to poison you with untested, unproven science that's not actual science, that doesn't have control mechanisms or blind studies, or even the WHO, the people at the WHO, the World Health Organization, before the whole pandemic broke out, in between Event 201 and sort of the whole pandemic breaking out, there was some information coming out about how they really didn't have the facts, they really didn't have the science, they really didn't have the proper tests being done on combinations of vaccines, and over time what that effect does to the health of the human body.
There's a lot of safety science that's needed, and without the good science, we can't have good communication. So although I'm talking about all these other contextual issues and communication issues, it absolutely needs the science as the backbone. You can't repurpose the same old science to make it sound better if you don't have the science that's relevant to the new problems. So we need much more investment in safety science.
I think we cannot overemphasize the fact that we really don't have very good safety monitoring systems in many countries, and this adds to the miscommunication and the misapprehensions, because we're not able to give clear-cut answers when people ask questions about the deaths that have occurred due to particular vaccine, and this always gets blown up in the media. One should be able to give a very factual account of what exactly has happened and what the cause of deaths are. But in most cases, there's some obfuscation at that level, and therefore there's less and less trust then in the system.
And there's plenty of doctors and scientists and people with degrees and flattering titles that have come out and have shown, their evidence of how the vaccines are damaging people. There's whole court systems set up to handle the liability issue that the vaccine manufacturers had in the past, where they knew that there was a certain percentage of people that would be harmed, and calling that safe and effective is okay in this whole technocratic, New World Order language where, if only several thousand people are injured, then that's called safe and effective. That's what we call that, right? So again, the collective and the consensus science decision there to go forward with these things is not correct just because the mass agrees that it is. But, that's really what democracy is. It's a collective decision agreeing kind of on what's right. There are some natural law, John Lockean flavor of philosophical underpinnings and a lot of kind of Masonic stuff and other weird stuff that doesn't exactly mean what people think it means, even in the freedom movement, when it comes to maybe what the Declaration of Independence or the preamble to the Constitution says. But there is still definitely things there that are worth picking up and revitalizing, if not revamping a little bit. And, what I always say is just going back again to upgrading the language to be able to explain and cross the bridge of the understanding of how, the collective versus the individual, but then being able to get back to, even if the people on the other side are in a debate of free will, or if they're already decided that you're a machine Borg that just needs to be programmed correctly, and if they just tinker these knobs over here and tinker these knobs over here, then you'll fall in line correctly to how they've plotted out in all their other graphs and calculations in magical machines, right? So it's more of a free will versus determinism, worldview dynamic. And a lot of the time people maybe aren't on one side of the other of the fence, but I go back to saying, well, then if you're not, it's not like you can just say, well, I don't have a moral philosophy. I don't need to know or understand an ethical stance on certain things, or I don't need to weigh in. I mean, that becomes sort of a moral relativism, right? When you sort of wishy-washy about where you fall on some of these more perennial debates. And then, good luck, when you come up against these people in the real world, getting to the bottom of anything when you're not really addressing what's the underlying worldview that builds up to where they're at. If they don't believe in freedom, if they don't believe in freedom of the individual, or free will, decision making, everybody's free will to be able to go about this how they'd like to discover what the C19 thing is for themselves with the information that's at hand, and not being forced to make a decision about our health, about how we move forward based on a consensus science reality, decision, basically a trance at that time that's been populated by the information that they're putting out there. When you see like Fauci and Birx is funded by Bill and Melinda Gates, and they're all tied in together, and it's not just like these are the only names that need to be focused on, but you can connect it back to where all the information does tie into certain groups of people that have certain key interests in your future and theirs, and how it will work out. You know, so it's not just a reaction to something natural in the environment that's happening. You have to start to see the planned part of what's unfolding and break down the pieces and go back and watch, you know, Corbett's 4-part series on Gates, or go and watch it for the first time and start to get an idea, and maybe watch How and Why Big Oil Conquered the World, along with the World War I documentary. I think there's other works out there that could be just as good to get you in the door of some of what's going on today. But I think, you know, for the kind of fast-paced track and somebody who just wants to kind of follow a history and start to understand, you know, distributed eugenics philosophy, which I'm starting to call this distributed, because they're inoculating everybody in the world to buy into eugenics philosophy without really knowing what it is. And even like the funding of Black Lives Matter, which would seem like a, you know, proactive and good thing to do, and maybe proactive is not the right word, right? But you're getting out and you're taking care of the problem by helping make some donations. You know, a lot of the time that money goes to, when you go through even the official channels, ends up going back to people who are eugenicists and eugenicist families, and have a history of practicing eugenics.
I'm just going to go ahead and make this easier for the dummies because they're so lazy. I can't make this up. This is Black Lives Matter. I'm going to click on the donate button. Okay. Now we're going to cruise down to here to, Act Blue Charities. I'm going to hit pause so I can open up with the browser. Hang on one second. You can do exactly what I'm doing. I'm not doing any hocus pocus. I just need to put down this camera real fast. 1 second. Okay, we're going to go to Act Blue here. We're going to do the Wikipedia. It's a nonprofit technology organization established that enables Democrats. Progressives are communists. Look them up. Progressive groups and left-leaning nonprofits to raise internet. Okay, so now we know all the money is not going to Black Lives Matter. It's going to something to do with the Democrats. Well, hang on. Let me go to the next. Okay, now this is Act Blue's expenditures for 2020. Let's take a look. Oh, rent, utilities, office expenditure, 2.3. So when you give money to Black Lives Matter, you're giving it to, what the hell is all this stuff? Okay. Campaign event activities. Let's keep cruising now. Federal candidates. $1 billion to federal candidates. Remember, this is for Democrats. Let's take a fundraising. Oh my God. Let's salaries. Okay. I wonder who that money goes to. The top vendors. Bernie Sanders. Biden for president. What the hell is all this? Huh. I thought we were giving money to BLM. Well, wait. It even gets better. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Now we're at Act Blue Civics. Let's go here. It's an influencewatch.org. This is Somerville. This is another left wing. Okay. This is... Okay, here we go. Ready? Let's cruise down. Let's see who they're involved with. You can do all this yourself. I'm just showing you, okay? Because we're going to speed it up so you guys will pay attention. Okay, here's the directors. All right, here we go. Here we go. Act Blue. Holy shit. What do we got going on here? The ACLU's involved? Oh my God. No wonder they hate Republicans and Christians. Let's cruise down here. What do we got going on here? Wait. Planned Parenthood, the ones that are actually killing black people. They're killing black people in the womb. Wait, did Margaret Sanger, the eugenics founder, the founder of Planned Parenthood? Wait, didn't they start that? They killed the black children off? You might want to do some research on that. MoveOn.org, isn't that George Soros? Yes, it is. George Soros. He's crashed nations. MoveOn.org. He even helped the Nazis kill Jews. Look it up. I'm not making it up. And wait a minute. What else do we have here? What else do we have? We got the Planned Parenthood. Where's the Tides Foundation? I know the Tides Foundation's in here because they're really bad. Voices of Progress. That's nothing. This is all friggin' communism. Look it up. The Democratic Socialists of America. So when you're giving money to Black Lives Matter, look at all this stuff. Isn't this amazing? This is great, you guys. If you don't think that COVID and Floyd and all that stuff isn't on purpose, you guys, then you have serious mental issues, because I just proved that something's going on here that is not. Oh, there it is. The best. Go look this one up. The Tides Foundation. It's owned by George Soros. I love it. So anyways, you guys, this is it. It's the proof. No conspiracy. Floyd, if he was either killed on purpose or he was killed regardless, you give money to Black Lives Matter, that money's going to shit that's not going to Black Lives Matter. Now, I proved it. You guys can go look yourself. Don't give any money to Black Lives Matter, because it's about destroying this nation. Don't you understand that? And bringing communism in here. Floyd's family wants the United Nations to police this country. And if you're a Democrat and you don't like Republicans, George Bush Sr., he addressed the nation, look it up. He wants a new world order with the United Nations to police the world. And that's why the mainstream media and social media has been attacking police and sheriff's offices, so you don't like them anymore. So we would go, oh, we want a reset. We want something new. And they'll bring the UN in. You have no idea what's going on. Start opening your eyes. Ed Mack.
And people like Planned Parenthood, oh, well, they're doing such great things for the black community. It was founded, and definitely a lot of the philosophical values that were held in the beginning were based on eugenics, and even the names and conventions being used were talking about, weeding out certain races, and that there were favored races that needed to be, kept, and certain races needed to be fizzled out. And now you see, millions and millions and millions and millions of abortions within, you could say the black community, but every community. I don't like to say, oh, there's this and that community versus another community, especially based on like a skin tone. But there's, there are boundaries there. There are communities that work better together, that people even, tend to migrate towards each other, that want a certain recognition or a certain familiarity with values and principles and things that they hold, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of the time, the manipulation is trying to blend and meld communities that don't get along, like, for example, like Islam and the West, trying to, have us feel, again, negative feelings towards discrimination against a certain community who might have values that aren't like ours. And if it has, to do against with like cruelty towards women and cruelty towards other people, or cruelty towards other people who are another race coming from, a certain group, then why should we allow those values to just be mixed in? Why? Because the collective tells us that now's the time, that we all just need to come, it's one world, we just need to come together and just be together without discernment, without discrimination, without borders, right? And I'm not for governmental borders or for the current government, or I'm not a statist for thinking that there should be boundaries between certain ways of being and others. So if I don't agree that, everybody should be forced to take medical treatments that they don't want to, and forced to do medical procedures daily when they're traveling in and out of, markets, then I should be able to locate a community of like-minded individuals who also agree, and we're also going to leave each other alone about these issues and just do our thing, right? But the collective is unrelenting. They will not relent, and that's another thing. There's, again, going back to my opening thing, like, there's always this cramping down. There's always this, restriction on behavior. And it's because there are a bunch of, people who don't have control over themselves. They don't have a personal ability to restrict themselves. Going back to it's about self-governance and self-mastery and the ability to take control of your own future and your own life, and not need to lean and get a UBI and get other people to, basically have that power over you as a collective, and then to the point where you're forced to do things. And I'm using the word forced in a way that's more of a psychological feeling forced, because there's no such thing as actually being forced into doing things that you don't want to do. no matter how much duress or pressure or outside input is attempting to get you to do something, and that's a responsibility to the self. A responsibility to the truth would be standing up and saying no in situations like that, right? So there isn't such a thing as force. There's cowardice and weakness, naivety, and just an ignorance and ignoring that which is the truth, or that the information that you need to take in order to understand more about yourself and what's going on in the world. Basically self-knowledge. The more knowledge and the more mastery of the self, the less need for a collective ideology and a collective dogma to buy into with the label. It's always going back to the label and needing the group and the fancy title to go on and explain what it is what particular group that you're a part of, right? You got to step out of the label, step out of the need to be labeled. So we got Mosley over here looking like he was just getting into something. Let's see. Are they? Let's see, what is he doing? Mosley. Where were you? He's a good boy, huh? Okay, he doesn't look like he's covered in poop, huh? Alright, well, got a couple things on the horizon here. Got my setup kind of falling apart on me. Sorry about the framing. Be off now. Last night we went up and visited some friends in Jackfest, the Freedom Festival. That was really beautiful, and it was like raining on and off throughout the day. It didn't rain while we were there. It was a bit muddy, but really cool kind of to see people come together in that way. And there was no, fear or paranoia or social distancing or masks. It's just, children playing around in the mud. Adults having adult conversations. I got to meet some people that I've talked to digitally on the phone and things like that, but haven't met in real life. That was cool, and we plan to go spend some more time up there. And I like the people that I've been able to network from that community have made, significant impact and started to build a lot more of what, could be potentially solutions to a lot of the problems out there. Is really just building community. As I see in the town I live in, a lot of the towns around here are like old Mormon settlements, are still like kind of Mormon settlements where the Mormons, pioneers, came down from after landing in Salt Lake City. And I don't know the exact story or everything, but I think at that point there was some movement. They even set out people to go and explore other territories. And the towns around here, what you do see is like, we got a text from somebody in the community the other day who had some extra goods from their farm, from some leftover, and they sent out text to their network. We had like 10 cars up and down the driveway that they're near us here, and that was within like a half hour of us receiving that text. And then there was like bags full of these goods that were left over for people, and it was just para gratis, just for the community, I guess. And it seemed as though, from the looks on the other people's and their reactions to what was happening in the scene there, was that this wasn't the first time that it was like a routine. The way people were lining up and kind of grabbing their stuff, and oh yeah, hey, and nice to see you again. I'm personally not an Mormon. I'm not LDS, just to clarify that. I was raised Mormon, and one day we could talk more about that. And one day I plan to go into more of my history with that and what I've discovered along the way, a lot of the books that I've read, and a history that I want to build out that I feel like hasn't been very well built out, that I'd like to spend a lot more time on. And that series in my mind would be called The Mormons and the Masons. And you can do some Googling, and there is some information out there, some documentary series that have been put together. I just kind of want to bring forward the facts more in a professional way, in a way that's not pointing any fingers or having any disgruntlement or anything. I just want to, show what I've discovered, and then during that journey of building that series or that documentary or whatever that would be, weave more of what we discover at that time and really kind of bring people in that have a lot more knowledge about the history of the Mormons and the Masons and the connection there and the ongoing sort of what I look at as a cover-up of really a Masonic lodge operating as a different type of church and kind of these neo religions in the world. The what's the word? Novel, the novel religions of the world that aren't that old, and the history is very interesting to look at. But anyway, that's not where I was going with that. Just there's a lot of other things in the works. There's a lot of potential with the new within the Stones Media Network endeavor and some of the partnerships that I've created to be able to produce content in a way that I've wanted to for a lot of years, and kind of keep that consistent. And the word I'm looking for is like a actual system that works, that I can crank a widget of producing good content and not just be like in the hole or like in a dungeon for 3 months trying to produce content, but like really do it in a way with a team and with a format and an idea set and a skill set that can produce, freedom oriented content. That's one of the goals of within the Stones, and what I've been doing, and the partnership with Autonomy Unlimited is going really well. There's a lot of fun things happening, a lot of exciting things happening, and a document that I think that would really help other people build their skill set and look at the value they can offer in the world in a different way that doesn't come out of the school system and doesn't get taught to people through the various means of indoctrination that we were raised with. And that document is called the 19 Skills Essential for Success, Not Taught in School. And that was produced by the Autonomy Unlimited team as a free book document PDF download that you can get by following the link in the show notes of this, as well as reaching out to me directly if you're interested in producing content and you've got things that you're working on currently. You're currently producing content. I'd like to learn what your challenges are and learn the things that you're working on and see, if there's anything that I can do to help or learn from you, as we have also an ongoing clinic of sorts, or I want to change the name of that, but a workshop where weekly it's called In the Control Room. And In the Control Room is a series of teaching people, all the skills they would need to do we're starting out with basic post-production skills, basic editing, video editing, audio editing, file management, making an interview edit versus making a small 2-minute advertisement clip, to getting into the different softwares available, to getting into the guts of those softwares and why you might need one versus the other. Essentially just an ongoing weekly course that builds out the skills. And it's not be just me as the teacher, but I am sort of trying to be the main distributor of information. But I'd also like to have others. That's why I'm making the call out. If you're interested in helping out with something like that, or you have something really cool going on that a team of people might be able to help with, you could teach us about what you're doing, and there might be some interest in the community that would be able to help you with your project. So that's another inroads to some of the new things that I've got going on that I feel like will help build out, a more free world in the end, or a more clear stream of the information, at least, about what we need to understand to know, what's going on around us. If that could be, a thing that is reached by these endeavors, then that's what I'm willing to put my time into, and have and will continue to do that. But anyway, TylerBloyer.com, just reaching out with a sit and talk today. This is a spot that I'd like to come to more and do more of these. It's right near my house, so it's a good kind of peaceful spot. The wind has not been that crazy lately, but today came back a little bit. No problem. I think I should be able to clean this up, and we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.